We're sort of gathering just a couple of things. Next Sunday, we'll be basically finishing the forgiveness process off tonight. Now, we haven't really covered forgiving ourselves. We may come back to that in a couple of weeks' time, but I'll be doing an exercise this Wednesday night as part of the 50 days where we will look in part at how to forgive ourselves, or in a sense, how to set ourselves free from those times when we have messed up and screwed up who we think we are. And so that will be an exercise that we'll be doing this Wednesday night as part of the 50 days program, which is in some ways could be looked at self-forgiveness, but there's a whole lot more to what we'll be doing on Wednesday as well. But next Sunday at the coffee hour, what we're going to be looking at is re-entry. And as you're aware, the isolation rules and what have you are being relaxed. And part of the re-entry issue for me is, it's okay for the government to say, hey, you can do whatever. But I think we also need to take responsibility for ourselves and say, what do we need? What is it that we really value about church? And how can we do that safely? And at this point, can we do it safely? And I know our church buildings are closed till the end of May. And this is the science side of me, keeps saying, I need to see some more data before we get back into church and to these confined spaces. And so I'm not ready to sort of jump in and say, 6th of June, we'll be back in church. I really want to see some good data about the next few weeks, but that's just me, and there's the leadership, and so conversation will be had, and a big part of it is hearing from you all in terms of what do you need to see, what do you need in order to feel safe coming back. And I think for me the big issue is not just about being safe for me, but what do I need to do to make it safe for you? And that I think the whole thing about wearing a mask in public is not just about protecting me, it's about protecting others. And so what do we need to do to make it safe for all of us? And so that's part of the conversation we'll be having next Sunday. And it's really about sort of plans for re-entry and what will we be doing, and sort of timing of all of that. And maybe there will be some kind of reopening in a series of phases. We don't know. At this moment, we're actually working on the plan, and that'll be the conversation we'll be having next Sunday during the coffee forum. Any other comments, thoughts, reactions before we get into the forgiveness process? That being said, okay, so today what we're going to do is sort of gather up all of the last, I think, 5 or 6 weeks when we've been looking at forgiveness in terms of all the steps of thinking about compassion, that some of these people who drive us crazy, we may be continuing to sort of try and be tender to them. We may need to be fierce, we may need to be mischievous, some alternative strategies. We looked at what resentment was. It's this ongoing demand that yesterday would have been different. And so thinking about how we can continue to demand that people would have behaved differently. It doesn't matter how bad the deed is. Sitting here and demanding that yesterday would have been different doesn't change today. And it certainly doesn't change yesterday. Well, in fact, in some ways it does change today, because it just makes today miserable. So we looked at converting a demand into a preference and extending goodwill toward that person, or surrendering them into the love of God. But today I want to bring all that together, and in quite a different way than probably many of you are accustomed to, because it's quite possible to help someone forgive, and you'll see it today, where we won't need to know who you're forgiving or what they did. So I hope you've brought your resentment with you to this call, but only do so if you want to leave without it. That's my goal, is that you will, so just think of somebody that you would like to forgive this morning. And just be aware of the resentment you currently have toward them and how you experience that. Because that's our starting point. And if you were to put that resentment on a 0 to 10 scale, just be aware of where it would be on that 0 to 10 scale. And my goal is to get that to 0. So that's the goal for this morning. So just set that aside, make a note of it, set it aside, because we've got another little exercise to do first. And the big thing about forgiveness is, since we can't change the past, what we need to do is change the way we remember the past, because the way we're remembering the past is actually what evokes the resentment. And so we need to, if we change the way we remember, we will not actually experience the resentment, because the resentment's hooked to the way, not the content. So to give you an idea of that, just set all your thoughts about resentment aside for a moment. I'm going to get you to do an exercise. First thing is, I want you to think of somebody that you love and care about. And to the best of your ability, just allow a picture of that person to come into your mind. And I may have mentioned this, I know I've done it on several other times. When I think of people, I don't get a very clear picture. Sometimes I can close my eyes and get a picture and it's like very high-tech color and all the rest of it. But a lot of the time, I don't really get a clear picture. It's kind of like a half-developed Polaroid, one of those old Polaroid pictures that's kind of all gray and green and what have you, and the picture's sort of half-developed. So that's what I get, and that'll work fine. Other times, I don't really even have a picture. I just have a sense. Just have a sense of the person, almost to the point that I could even point to where that person is if I was just to close my eyes. So allow a picture or to get a sense of that person that you care about. When you got that, just set that aside. Now I want you to think of somebody that you don't care about. And I don't care why you don't care. I just think of someone that for whatever reason, and it's unimportant why you don't, just think of someone that you don't care about. And as you think about that person, just allow a picture of them to form in your mind. And again, if you don't get a clear picture, that's okay, or just have a sense of that person, that'd be okay. So now I want you to, having got that picture, I want you to bring the picture back of the person that you care about and look at the two pictures at the same time. And so the first question I have is, which picture's on the left and which picture's on the right? I don't want to know who's in the pictures. I just want to know which one's on the left and which one's on the right.
These are these of people we care about and one who we're indifferent to, or one we don't like?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, either way. Yeah, so you've got like a picture the person that you care about, picture that you don't care about, and this is highly idiosyncratic. I just want you to be aware that probably one picture's on the left or the right. It could be that one's up and one's down, but most of the time it's usually on the left or the right when you look at them simultaneously in your mind's eye. Now, the next thing is, which picture seems closer to you than the other? So it's like one picture far away and the other picture close. So here's the question. Which picture seems closer to you? How many of you, and you can just wave your hand actually, how many of you would say the picture of the person that I care about seems a whole lot closer than the person I don't care? So you got 1, 2, okay. Cool. And so I'm guessing then the other people who would say, no, the person I don't care about is closer. We got a few people in that category. Okay, so here's the interesting thing here. And this is a big part about the way we use English language and the way the language we use kind of shapes our reality. We have all these metaphoric kinds of comments that I have a close relationship with this person. And if the picture that you care about is closer to you, then that's what I would say. In your experience, you have a close relationship with that person you're caring about. But the person that you don't care about, we're kind of distant in the way we relate. Now, for the others of you, though, who have the person that you don't care about much closer, here's what I would strongly guess, is you don't trust this person. And we also have that saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And you've got to keep an eye on this person. Now, take that person that you don't trust, and just know that you can always move it back. But here's just a little exercise for you to do, is to take that person's picture and put it behind you and notice what happens. How many of you felt really uncomfortable when you took the picture of the person you don't trust and put it behind you? Yeah, several. Now, here's the interesting thing. It would be really, really stupid to put someone you don't trust behind you. They'd stab you in the back. You've got to keep an eye on this person. And so the way we actually process information is actually amazing. That we have figured this out even though we don't consciously know it. When we're thinking about, say, the people we don't trust, we want to keep an eye out. And so those pictures, the way we process that information, they will always be out in front, a little closer, so we can keep an eye on them. Now, here's another thing, just to notice a difference here, and this will become really important when we get to doing the forgiveness piece. Take the picture of the person that you care about and swap it for the person that you don't care about. So just switch those pictures so that they're in the two different places. And just notice your internal reaction. And my guess is, again, that many of you would find that really uncomfortable and it would feel really, really wrong. And even if you don't get a clear picture, if you just have a sense of the person. I know when I think of having a sense of the person, if I take the person I care about and put them over there where the person I don't care about is, well, in fact, they won't stay there. They'll just pop back to where they were. It's like, yeah, this is wrong. For some reason, I need the person I care about right here. And it feels really, really wrong to put a person I don't care about in that space, almost like I'm contaminating it, that this is a sacred space inside of me that I don't want violated. So we're just learning a little bit this morning about how we actually process information inside of us and how we hold it in consciousness. So now we're going to use that same process to actually forgive. So I want you to go back and to think of that person that you were resenting a few minutes ago, and allow a picture of that person to form in your mind. And I'm wondering where that picture is located in your mental space. Is it out to the left? Is it out to the right? Is it right in front of you? How far away from you is it? Does it feel like it's 6 feet away? Does it feel like it's just 2 inches from your nose? Does it feel like it's the other side of the room? Just be aware. If you close your eyes and look at that picture, where are you looking when you think of this person that you have this resentment toward? So you all have a sense of where that person's picture is? Cool. Now, just set that aside. Now I want you to go back in your memory and think of somebody who has hurt you in the past, and at the time, you really, really resented them. But as you think of them today, it's like, I don't resent that person. I'm no longer making that demand that they would have been different. I can acknowledge that they hurt me, but it no longer hurts and I no longer resent them. Somehow or rather, I seem to have moved on. May not even been aware of how, but allow a picture of that person come into your mind. And just notice the location of that picture. So when you close your eyes and you think of that person that you have forgiven, and so the next step in this process is to take the picture of the person that you resent and move that picture of the person that you resent to the place of where you've got the person that you forgive. And put that picture over there with them. And notice what happens. And the first question I would have is, does the picture stay there? So I've got some head shakes. No, the picture doesn't stay there. So a couple of things we need to, now, how many people would do a thumbs up and say, yeah, the picture stays there? Okay, so for the people who have said, yeah, the picture stays there, just check it out. See if you can get the resentment back that you had 2 minutes ago. Can you get it back, Catherine? Isn't that wild? I find that really, really cool. Now, what we've done, this is just a metaphor for what we've done. If you imagine inside of your brain, you've got this big filing cabinet and you've got a file drawer full of people I resent. And you've got another one drawer with people I've forgiven. and you've just taken the folder of the person that you resent and put it down into the folder of the people that you've forgiven. So you've basically reclassified this person in consciousness as someone you've forgiven. And all of that resentment will just not be there because it's hooked to the resentment drawer, not to the forgiven drawer. Now, and one way just to close that drawer of the people that you've forgiven is just to wish the people in that drawer well. And close the drawer. Now, for the people though that the picture didn't stay there, and this is where it's very important, we don't want to force anything. And just like when we were swapping the picture of the person that you care about and the person you don't care about, it feels really wrong. Some of you will have the experience, no, that person that I have the resentment toward doesn't belong in that drawer. And this is quite common. And so one of the things that we need to do is to check out some of the characteristics. One of the big characteristics would be the issue of trust. And remember, we talked about what forgiveness was and wasn't and what have you, and that just because you've forgiven someone doesn't make them trustworthy. But if you were to look at the categories of people that you have forgiven, so if the current resentment, for example, is someone who has hurt you and isn't trustworthy and still has not demonstrated any trustworthy behavior, chances are when you look at the people that you have forgiven, the person that you were thinking about is someone who has hurt you, but is in some way maybe trustworthy. Now, this could be, there's several other examples that we need to look at, but this would be the first one. So if that's the case, is anyone in that situation that the person that they think about who they have forgiven, they're an okay person, I kind of trust them, but the current person is not trustworthy? Is that? Okay, cool. Okay, so the next step would be to think of somebody who's hurt you in the past, and as you think about them today, you no longer resent them, but you still don't trust them because they're basically an untrustworthy person. They haven't demonstrated any trustworthy behavior to you. And chances are, when you think of that person, you'll find that that's in a different place. So if you were to close your eyes, get a picture of that person, that's kind of interesting. That the people I've forgiven, and trust is not an issue, they're in one location, but the people that I've forgiven and still don't trust, they're in a different place. You find that location. And so now move the picture of the person that you resenting and still don't trust, move them to that new location that you've established in your mind. And notice what happens. The first question would be, does the picture stay there? So, Nanette, does the picture stay there?
Yeah, it's weird, but it will stick in that spot.
Isn't it? Now, see, this is what I find really, I've been doing this for years, and I find it really amazing, the incredible way we actually process information inside of our consciousness, that we have our brain is kind of like this big, huge three-dimensional spatial array of information, huge database. It's not a flat database, it's sort of three-dimensional, and we have a real amazing way of classifying information, and a big part of it is locations. You know, like when you think of going into one of these big old sort of archival data places, I think of mystery novels, and they go into the police evidence or room, and there's just this big warehouse with boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff, and you've got to know where it's located if you want to find it, and because there's just rows and rows and rows of filing cabinets and boxes of information. And we do the same thing inside of our consciousness, and that we have all sorts of interesting ways. And sometimes you could even find that people fine tune it. They have family members who have they forgiven and sort of still care about, family members who they've forgiven and don't trust, non-family members who they've forgiven and left behind, non-family members who they've forgiven and still don't trust, and they're all have their own kind of unique place in consciousness in terms of the way we remember. And all we need to do is figure out the precise characteristics of the current person, and to be able to reclassify, if you like, in our consciousness, primarily by location. So let's just go back and check. If the pictures stayed in the new location, see if you can get the resentment back. And if you can't, then I want you to really, really humor me and try really, really hard to get it back. And really, really try hard to get it back. And now, hang on, Bob, just before we, Rob, before we get there. When you tried really, really hard to get it back, did you get it back, Nanette? Cool. Okay, so Rob, your question.
So instead of getting the resentment back, what I got was the remorse over all the time I wasted resenting. And
so
what I could have done to invest in that relationship instead.
And actually, this is something that's also interesting. If you check your 0 to 10 scale, you think about this person. If you have like 2 or 3 points of distress or sort of an uncomfortable feeling, chances are that that's not resentment, that's grief.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was going to say. When Rob said that, oops, I'm muted.
No, Nanette, you weren't muted. We can't hear you now. You're muted now.
Oh, actually, I've unmuted.
I don't have my glasses on. I can't see where they're up. Okay.
Other Joseph playing Broadway shows this morning.
When Rob said that, I was so flooded with emotion as soon as you asked me, can I get her back? And I tried real hard, and I was so flooded with that remorse or grief or something. I mean, the word, I couldn't find it, but the word was grief, but just this incredible sadness of, you know, maybe not lost time, but how God sees us, and that I just, you know, it was wasted energy holding on to that, just completely wasted energy holding on to that. And there's just this flood of relief and grief and.
Well, and I think, so there's 2 things there. One of them is just to take a moment to be gentle with yourself, and to, you know, you can regret, wow, I wasted a bunch of energy on this. and you can go down that path, or you could stop and say, thank God, I have learned a new way, and won't have to continue to do that, and to also hold yourself with some compassion and love, that when you, just to be aware that when you were resenting, you were doing the best you knew how to stay safe. And I want you to honor that part of you that does want to keep you safe. Now, what it's learning is a more effective strategy of staying safe, but I do want you to honor that part of you that's doing the best it knows how, and to also thank it for having the capacity to learn and to develop and learn a new way of being in the world. And so you can take a moment to delight in your capacity to learn and to discover a new way of being. From my perspective, there's only, I don't know whether it's the unforgivable sin, but I think really the biggest problem that we ever have in life is a failure to learn. To say, hey, that wasn't the smart thing to do. We just need to actually figure out something alternative, a different way of being. And that we are all going to go out and screw up and mess up and do all sorts of things, and we could have done it better. And rather than getting down on ourselves, the important thing is to continually be in that place where we're actually figuring out a new way of being and learning. So I want to come back to the resentment.
Before you proceed, may I throw another variable in there?
Yep.
My resented probably more of an intellectual resentment rather than emotional. So swapping pictures and appearing and disappearing was not a trying exercise. I could go either way. But when you started to say, bring back the resentment, that was also an easy exercise because my resentment was more intellectual. Comment, or am I just too far outside of what you're trying to say?
It would be interesting, Bob, if you were to I'm just thinking here. Is this resentment something that you actually want to get rid of?
Actually, no. It's something that I actually value. I suspect that not the resentment per se, but certainly intellectual differences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think my big thing is for people sort of going around in a place of emotional distress that robs them of joy and good functioning. Part of it is the other piece, the intellectual piece, is to be aware, and just because I've forgiven someone, I no longer have the emotional distress. I still don't agree with them. I still would want to challenge them in the court of opinion, so to speak, or, sort of, it's like that we're still seeking justice or a new way of living. And if they're continuing to do what they're doing, I'm going to challenge them and say, no, I don't think that's appropriate. And I think, that's why we do have a police force and, places that are here to protect and say that behavior is inappropriate.
And a conscience.
So, yeah, and a conscience. Yeah. And so, yeah, I'm this was a couple of weeks ago, we talked about forgiveness isn't just surrendering your values and saying, hey, have at it, go at it, do whatever. I think we are called to be responsible people, to live in harmony with one another and to seek justice, particularly to seek justice for those who can't seek it for themselves in one way or another, who are disenfranchised. And so I'm totally into that. And I'm not going to I may forgive somebody, but I'm not surrendering my values and saying what you're doing. Hitler, I've forgiven Hitler, but Hitler is still wrong. And to the Hitlers of this world that we live in, they are still wrong, and to do whatever I can to say no, and to seek justice rather than to allow evil and wickedness to pervade. But I want to seek justice, and this comes back to the place of compassion. I want to seek justice fiercely rather than from a heart filled with anger and hostility, because I know when I get mad and angry, I will end up creating more injustice. But when I fiercely pursue a just future and gather together with other like-minded people, and together we fiercely seek a just future, then I think there will be more justice in the world.
Rob,
Kelly.
is there a difference between resentment and righteous anger?
I would say righteous anger for me would be, my label for that would be fierceness. I would say the thing that makes anger righteous is when I let go of my ego, or my ego lets go of it. And I would also say that, and this goes back to the compassion piece, is that this is the way I use the language and make some significant distinctions. I think of anger as a looking back in the past and saying that was wrong, how dare you, and all that kind of stuff. And my anger, my rage is all about the past and a perceived injustice. And as I'm raging about the past, I'm not looking into the future, looking to pursue a just future. I want revenge and all of that kind of stuff. And that's what's in my anger. It's all full of my ego that's hurt and wants revenge. Righteous anger, what makes anger righteous, and I would call that fierce, is when I turn my mind, like Jesus set his mind to Jerusalem. He's pursuing the future, and to be pursuing a just future. So that's what I would, and at that point, I'm not pursuing revenge. I'm pursuing a future. And, it could be, you think of some of the heinous things that happen in our society, child abuse and those kinds of things. I have no problem putting a child abuser in jail. I'm not going to do it because I want to punish that person. I want to do it to protect all of you and all of your children and your children's children. This person has clearly demonstrated they're not safe to live in society. And I have no problem putting someone like that in jail. But I don't want to be doing it out of an act of revenge. That makes absolutely no sense to me at all. Because, as Nanette was sharing, carrying resentment is hard work. And it's like, oh, geez, why did I do that for so long? I do want to come back to the grief piece. For some of you, if you forgive somebody and there's still some, I would call it distress when you think of the person, often that will be grief, because part of what's happening is you're now acknowledging actually the relationship is over. And that sometimes resentment was the only thing we had that was continuing to connect us to that person. I can think of people who haven't seen someone for maybe 10, 15 years, they still resent them, but when they finally forgave them, they then actually had to acknowledge the relationship's over and the hope of having a relationship is over. And that I would classify as grief. And there's some other things that we can do to resolve that kind of grief. We may look at it in another class. I want to come back though and to check in because there's one other place where if the picture didn't stay where it should, or there's still some distress, I'm wondering, is anyone in that situation? And I don't need to know the content. I just want to, and the big time when this is like,
Which situation, Bob?
well, if you think of the person that you were forgiving, we'll just check it out right now. Think of the person that you were resenting a few minutes ago and see if you can get the resentment back. And if you, can anyone, just wave a hand, if can anyone get it back? Uh-huh. Cool, cool. So here's now, just to check in with you, Bob, are you getting the intellectual resentment back, or are you getting the visceral?
No, I don't think my resentment was visceral to start with. It was more, it was more mental than emotional.
Okay. Uh-huh. So I'm not sure that, well, and actually the question would be, is that a problem, or is that just the way you process things in order to stay safe? And it seems like a pretty good strategy to you.
Well, actually, I liked your comments on, forgiving is not to, accepting everything either. I mean, I'm not giving up myself. I'm just, I'm still in disagreement with. Now, I just couldn't think of a better example for resentment at the time. My apologies.
That's cool. Yeah, and the other thing, and just to pay attention to that, forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. I think that was a big distinction I made a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. You can forgive somebody, and it's kind of like, and even Bob, in terms of that sort of intellectual kind of thing, it's like, I can think of people that I've forgiven and I don't agree with, and it's like, if I have to, I'll hang out with them, but I'm really not going to go out of my way to go find them, because they're not fun to be around. And, I go back to that thing that Jesus said, when you go into the town, you say peace. And if the peace is not returned, leave. You don't have to hang out with people who would who would use you. What's the word that he's,
Despite.
He's talking about not cast, spitefully use you. It's like, no. Now,
but the
other person who,
your point's well taken. I've had very good friends that I had great disagreements with. I didn't consider I didn't resent the intellectual differences there. I guess the ones that I do resent are the ones that take the self-righteous, I'm right, everybody else is wrong attitude. And I have a problem with that, of course. And I don't know that I'm going to give that up.
No, it clearly, it is about forgiveness is not about a loss of integrity, intellectual and integrity. It's like a big part of it is clarifying your values and, I'm going to keep this value. And I think there's also ways to be partially reconciled with people. We can forgive people, and there may be, I think of lots of the big, huge issues that have torn churches asunder, sexuality and all those kinds of issues in the last few years. And it's like some of those conversations, if you're on a very, very different place than somebody else in any of those things, it's just, from my experience, it's just not worth having the conversation. But the two of you could be totally in agreement that it's fundamentally wrong, for 1 in 5 children to be going to bed tonight hungry in our country. And so we could be working shoulder to shoulder in a food program for children, at the same time having huge disagreement on some other issue. And I think it'd be much smarter to figure out what we can agree on and get on and do that for the benefit of the world than try and convince other people they're wrong. Because from my experience, well, I'm a total failure in convincing other people they're wrong. They just don't seem to like that. Now, there's one other person, and I apologize. I don't know. I think it's Laura, but your name on the screen is William Gay, and so you'd put
Francis.
Francis.
Right.
So it's Francis.
That's correct.
Okay. Cool. Now, you said that you could get the resentment back. I don't want to know who, what, when, the details of that, but you said you could still get the resentment back.
Yes, it's actually, I was thinking about, it's really a hurt, a very deep hurt. It's almost not resentment as it is, or maybe the two or intermingle.
Well, I think there's one of the things that can happen is that sometimes we get a hurt and it's almost like there's a wound and that hurts, and then we continue to blame the other person for the wound that's in our, imagine if you got stabbed or something and the wound is there and it's festering, but we continue to blame the other person, and you can forgive the person, but there's still the wound there, right, that's hurting. Does that seem what it's like, Francis?
Yes, it is. I tend to forgive people. I don't hold resentment. It's a waste of time.
But the hurt's still there.
But the hurt's still there.
Okay, so here's a little thing that we can check this out. First question, again, I don't want to know who and what, and we are recording this, so I don't want to know who and what you're forgiving or resenting, but I want you to, first question I'd have, was this kind of like a one-time or maybe 2 or 3 time event that's long in the past?
It's a one-time thing. It's
Okay, cool.
Well, it was big. It was huge. It
Yeah.
wasn't a tiny hurt. And it's been a long time.
Okay, so here would be one thing you can do, Francis. Just take that little piece of hurt, play it through in your mind like a movie. Yeah, you don't have to spend too long, just watch the movie. Now, next thing is, if the movie's about this long, find the piece of movie that's this long that happened just before that event.
Okay.
Kind of like what led up to it. Okay, so just play the 2 pieces of movie together, the piece that happened before, and then the event.
But we don't understand, I still don't understand why this person did this and has refused to share the information.
Yeah. And
I apologize for whatever I did.
well, I think this is one of those situations where you're actually kind of putting your emotional well-being on hold until you understand why.
No, I'm ready to move forward, as you said.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Because if you really wanted to get a clear understanding of why they did what they did, and you get a really good history of why that took place, the problem is you're going to have to spend a lot of time, because we're going to have to go all the way back to the garden that Nanette and Mike are in.
Well, I get that. I've gotten that piece.
So figuring out why people do what they do, it's kind of like we'll be here for the whole history of humanity is going to be clicked into that one. So go back to get the movie, the little piece of movie that happened before, the little piece of movie that happened that you don't understand why, but just play that piece of movie through. Doing this in the video studio of your mind. And now put that, find the piece of movie in your mind that comes directly after you got hurt and the next time you experience some kind of comfort. So the person hurt you, and then maybe you talked with a friend or you went somewhere else and you experienced comfort.
Okay, I've done that.
Cool. Now play all three pieces of movie through together. What happened before, painful memory, and then the movie of to comfort.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Now, need you to step back from that, and you're going to have to do this really quickly, Francis. Play the whole movie of your life, starting when you were a baby.
Oh my goodness.
Which is a couple of days ago. Go back, and I want you to play the whole movie through really fast, but I want you to take these three pieces of movie that you put together as one piece and put them in the right part of time. So they're actually in the right place in your timeline. So you're playing the whole movie of your life, and this event is in its right place and time. And then play the movie of the rest of your life since then, and play the movie of tomorrow and the next day, and you're in isolation at the moment. Think about what it's going to be like when we get out of isolation and hang out with people at church and all sorts of other things. So play the movie of the future. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So now play that movie through with the little piece of movie in its right place and time. Do that again.
Okay.
Okay, and now stand in the present moment today and look back on that piece of movie way back where it's supposed to be in your timeline.
It's insignificant.
Ah. Now see if you can get the pain back, the hurt back.
Yeah.
You
I can
still
get it
can?
back.
Okay, cool. A couple more things to do then. Now, here's the thing, Francis, I don't want you to forget what happened, because if you forget what happened, you'll have to go out and do it all over again just to prove that it wasn't smart to have it done in the first place, right?
Yes.
Cool. So I don't want you to forget. I just want you to be able to remember without the hurt. That's the goal, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so when you look back on that piece of movie and the whole of your movie, right? I want you to take that picture, the bit before the painful thing and then the piece to comfort, that piece of movie. And have you ever been in a movie theater where they have, in the movie theater, they have these big posters that are like an archetypal scene from the movie?
Yes.
Okay, so take that little piece of movie that we've got that you put together, and I want you to make it into one static poster, like an archetypal scene. So it's no longer a movie, it's just a picture.
Okay.
Cool.
Cool.
Now, check out where in time, where does it belong in your timeline, and check around that time for other pictures of other stuff that was happening in your life that don't have any kind of emotional content. It's kind of like, yeah, it's just neutral. you remember stuff, but it's just like, yeah, it doesn't evoke any memory or anything. You think of other pictures from that time, just, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now look at the two pictures, the picture that you've just created and the picture that you've just remembered, and take the picture that you've created and make it the same size and color, or maybe it's black and white, either way, or if it's a little fuzzy and muted, or maybe it's clear, and whatever the qualities of the picture that you remembered, make the picture that you've created to look like that picture.
Okay.
Cool. Now, stand in this present moment.
Right.
And look back on that past event and see if you can get the hurt back. Be able to remember it, but can you get the hurt back?
I can get it back.
You can get it back. Okay. One more thing to do.
I feel badly taking up the time.
This is cool. Well, I'm having fun. I don't know about the rest of you, but yes. Tell me, Francis, what do you really, really love to do? Beyond being with your family, what do you love to do?
Garden.
Garden, cool. Yes. And what is it about gardening do you really love?
Being with the earth. Watching things develop and grow into beautiful things. Sharing a garden with many other people.
Okay. Sure.
Because cool. There is a lot of love goes into making a garden grow and be something of God's beauty.
Cool, cool. It's kind of cool what you said there, because what I know about good gardeners, it's not simply about caring for the plants, it's caring for the earth, the dirt, and that's great gardeners. That's the first thing they do, is care for the earth. So you care for the earth, you grow things of beauty, you get to co-create with God, because you can plant a seed, right?
Right.
But ultimately that miracle of growth and beauty and all of that.
Right.
But you get to co-create with God in that moment of caring for the earth and all of those kinds of things, right?
Yes.
Cool. I love it. And then you get to share that with others. So
I do. And then I love having people tell me how beautiful and how much they enjoy it.
Cool, cool. Okay, so here's what I want you to do now. Just see that the beauty of caring for the earth, of co-creating with God and sharing that beauty with others and having them delight in what you've created. I want you to see that as a golden thread, or even like a golden rope, because my suspicion is that's actually the core essence of Francis' life, is caring and loving and sharing that with others. And so I want you to see that as a golden thread that's actually, it's the thread that's tied all of your life together. And so I want you to imagine that golden thread going out all the way through the past, and you can see times when you've gardened, but then there are times when you've cared for others in a very similar way, but there wasn't gardening, it was doing something else. But to see that golden thread going all the way through your past out to before you were born.
Okay.
And see it going all the way out into the future.
Right.
Cool. Now see that thread going all the way back out through your past, and I want you to run that thread clear through the picture of when you got hurt. And know that at that time, it may have got a bit frayed, but it never got broken because you know it today. So that tells me that thread never got broken. So I want you to see that golden thread going clear through that picture of the time when you got hurt.
I've continued to love gardening and caring and
Yep. So you see it going all the way back to before you were born. People were in the Garden of Eden, gardening and having a great time. And you can see gardening and the love of gardening all through human history, through Francis's history, going all the way out into the future.
yes.
And see that golden thread actually going clear through the very core of your physical being right now as you sit in your living room there.
I see it. I feel it.
Feel it. Cool. Okay. Now, look back on that past event, Francis, and see whether you can get the hurt back.
It's
In fact,
diminished.
try
So, yes.
It's diminished. And the last little thing, do you have any objection to it going completely away?
No. I wish it would go away.
Okay. Then from this moment, as you see the golden thread going through that picture way back in the past, just wish the Francis of today, get the Francis of today to wish the Francis of the past. Just wish her well and offer her your love and caring.
Okay. Yep. It'll always be there.
Well, now, and this is the important thing, Francis. The memory will always be there because you can't erase a memory.
That's true.
It's our emotional attachment to the memory is what we need to let go of.
Well, yes, it is. I understand that. And I've done a pretty good job. Done the best I could.
Yes, you have. And there are still plenty more gardens to work on, right?
Right. Thank goodness.
Cool. All righty.
Reverend Rob, when you have a chance, I
Hey,
wanted to share something briefly. I don't want to interrupt her, though.
Right. Okay, go for it, Jeff.
I've had in my lifetime 2 family members that have had a substance problem, and it was from an early age. And one family member.
Hang on, Jeff. Jeff, can I just let me say this is being recorded.
I don't mind.
Well, no. I'd rather just stay. The piece that I'm working with today is I don't want to get into the content of what people have done. I'm really interested in the how people are processing that content.
Okay, I'll edit it that way, and I'll try to be brief. But one person was happy even though they had this issue, and the other person was sort of mean and Jekyll and Hyde. And since I was little, I was like at the age of 7 or 8, and it went on for a long time, like 50 years. But anyway, the way I processed it, psychologically, I think there's an analogy for this, but I I put it in a room and I shut the door on it. And I know sometimes that's not a good thing to do, but I view it as compartmentalization, like gardening or clipping the movie clips out of your life. It's I don't forget it. I still have the memory, but I don't spend time dwelling on it, or I may grieve occasionally about it, but I don't let it interrupt who I am. I try to clip and compartmentalize, and I also this person, I honor their good times. It wasn't Jekyll. It was, or I mean, it wasn't. It was a good time when the person wasn't having the issue. So I'm just trying to say psychologically, I've benefited from being able to put it in a room and keep the door shut and not have it affect my gardening, to borrow the analogy.
Well, I think part of, here's where what I would suggest, Jeff. What you're very similar to what I'm suggesting in one sense of refiling things from being a place of resentment. The thing that I would be looking at particularly is if you have to spend with two things. One of them is it's not to forget, or it's not to sort of push away what's happened to us, because that becomes really problematic. Because if you really push something away or try to forget it, you're going to have to repeat it to teach yourself yet again. It's not a smart thing to have done. The piece of the idea of putting it into a room, and I like the metaphor more of refiling it, reclassifying it. If you put it in that memory in a room of love, where it can be accessed when you need to access it, and where you can leave it when you don't need to be thinking about it, that to me would make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't have to be a dark room, because I think we need to be able to see quite clearly some of these things that have happened. But the important thing I think you're bringing up, which I would affirm, is you can't change what's happened.
Right.
The only thing we can change is how we remember. And the big thing is changing the how rather than changing the what. We spend most of our life obsessing about the what, the content, and endlessly telling the stories over and over and over and over again about what was done to us, which actually just reinforces the pain and the distress, thinking that if we could tell the story one more time, it would somehow go away. And it doesn't. In fact, often telling the story over and over and over again just makes it bigger and more miserable in our life. And so we can actually interrupt a whole lot of that by changing the how. I'm aware that we're kind of way over time. And so if people need to go on about their day and Mother's Day and all of that kind of stuff, let you go. Thank you, Francis, for being willing to share and play a little bit. And want to wish you all a really good day. And next Sunday, as I said before, we'll be looking at what do we need to do to make it safe enough for you to feel safe as we re-enter church and community activities. So have a great week, folks.
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.